Chapter 1: The Tower's Edge. She was made to save him. They all wore. They were Receptites. Remnants of the court of Saber Mortalis, 12th king of Elysium. They were bred to breach the grim tower, an edifice of immense design that rose 2 kilometers into the sky. It looked over the capital. Its shadowing loomed over city blocks, towers and skyscrapers, only stopping near the foot of Castle Mortalis. Their life's purpose had been in the training and execution of this one night. Their childhood spent understanding its layout and circumvention. Thousands of mental simulations, pain receptors pushed to their extreme so that every bullet, every blade stroke, every mistake seemed real. Eleven's brain broke during the training. She screamed until she stopped. 10 didn't scream. She wasn't weak like 11 had been. She would not die. Even though death was an inevitability, the tower was daunting. Approach from the air was deemed impossible. At all times, the airspace around the tower, approximately 10 square miles, was stationed by floating air mines and patrolled by the Empire's 3rd Air Wing 24 hours a day. Alongside patrols of networked drones that numbered in the hundreds of thousands that routinely scanned the surrounding city. On the ground was an array of anti-aircraft cannons, missile turrets, and tracking systems. The city had expanded, growing around the defense system, shielding it as well as hampering it in certain instances, but these instances were deemed insufficient in an infiltration. The tower was intimidating, once a place for criminals in the time of the Old Kingdom. During the transition period between the Kingdom of Elysium and the Empire Elysium, it had become a place for political dissidents. However, its current form only came about when a certain tenant took residence in its topmost section. In the span of 20 years, all of the extra fortification was built. This was all to keep one man inside, forever. This man had killed the king, Saber Mortalis, on the day of the imperial renewal. This man, for his crime, was sentenced to life within the tower. It was almost to the day 800 years ago that act of regicide transpired, and it had been 13 years since 10 and her sisters had been born. Each of them was a Receptite. Within their wombs lay a hallowed goblet by which the sacred refined ambrosia was held. They'd been born from the ancient heretical texts of the first Queen Wenda, genetically modified from genetics of the best of the Seraphim militia. While they were only a few decades old, their aging process and mental development had been accelerated so that now they resembled young women at the pinnacle of their maturation, ripe fruit ready to be plucked. They were further modified with the ability to use the ambrosia beyond the restraints the Empire permitted. This meant they could hit harder, run faster, jump higher, think quicker, but only for a limited time. They were Receptites, not true Elysians. They could only utilize the ambrosia in short spurts. This knowledge was factored into every plan, long before their birth and during their training. 10 knew this all. She'd known it ever since she looked up into the sky and imagined the tower looming down on her. She wasn't afraid to die, but she feared it more than anything. This paradox plagued her mind as she sat in the back of the truck. The transport was sturdy. Its engine did not falter. It carried them through the night, the district's denizens peacefully unaware of what lay hidden within the truck's cargo trailer. The trailer was enclosed, impossible to be opened from outside and within. One of its wheels squeaked as it jostled. As 10 meditated on her birth task, this squeaking was a constant reminder of the imperfections that could splinter itself into any well-laid plan. This made her open her eyes. Thrust from her battle trance, she watched her sisters. Their faces were all similar. They were not true twins, however. Certain parameters in their melanin and genome had caused them all a varying degree in skin tone and hair. One was the darkest, with skin that was smooth and reflected the light. From 2 on, their skin lightened, hair changing from dark brunette to ginger red, auburn, and with 10, blonde. These differences did little to dissuade their voices, though others, like their father Apollos, claimed she was the lightest in tone compared to the harsher spoken one. They were each enshrined within black nanoscale battle armor that would heighten their human frames and super-exceed their abilities when utilizing the ambrosia. The suit hugged her body and she could feel its internal systems humming, occasionally running an electric current through her body to check her vitals. The helmet, which formed from the nanoscale of the armor, was folded across her shoulders and would give her a perfect 3-dimensional view of the battlefield when in use. But Ten thought that was unnecessary. The tower had been probed for 20 years before they were created, through backroom deals, bribery and assassinations. The militia had acquired a detailed map of the tower. By the time she and her sisters were 8 years old, they each had a near photographic memory of the tower's layout. All her life had led up to the coming moments, so much so that it ached, her body wanting to perform the necessary jumps, kicks and slides she had carved into her very muscles. Her foot tapped rapidly, throwing her other sisters out of their battle trances. She glanced at them. "I'm sorry," she spoke as she fought the urge to pull her finger over an imaginary trigger. One smiled, her eyes closed, still in the depths of her battle trance. She said, "Teeny's gonna get shot first." Her sisters giggled. "Shut up." Ten frowned. It was all a morbid teasing, a mocking they'd done since they were little. An admission of a possibility done over, and over that the reality of the words had long ago lost their meaning. "I bet you're going to get shot first and you're going to die screaming." "Nope, I'm going to live longer than any of you." Five was red-haired and freckled. When she smiled, the world seemed to light up. "I'm going to live, and when we get back home, I'll put roses on all your graves." One opened an eye, and with a sly smirk said, "Why would we have graves?" Six, whose hair was brown and eyes always twitching, said, "Wait, we won't have graves." "We won't have bodies, dummy," said one. "That makes me sad," said three. "I thought we'd at least get cremated." Four, whose skin was yellowish in tone, sat forward, spreading her feet broadly, and said, "I'm only worried about my kill count. In the last simulation I was only third." "Hey," said two, who sat near the front of the cabin. "What's wrong with being third?" "No one wants to be second fiddle, ain't that right, 1A?" One chuckled. "Damn right." She stood, pressing her palm into the ceiling to keep steady. "You girls better step up because tonight is the real thing. In 10 more minutes, we're going to break right through the Grim Tower gates. We're going to kill anyone who stands in our way. Won't be hollow soldiers, not metal projections screaming as they die. It'll be real men who we can hurt for real." "That'll be nice for a change," said three. One's eyes dimmed for a bit and fell to the floor. "Some of us aren't coming back." Her words were not the mockery of life they were used to. The true essences of what they were born to do, snuck their way into her words, weighing them in a way they had never been before. "For any who do, don't forget us." They listened to the sound of the engine and to the squeaky wheel. Ten smiled. Who could forget someone so ugly? Her sisters turned sharp, hurt eyes on her. The worst of them all were ones. I'm sorry." The truck went over a hump and bounced. A second later, the cabin erupted into laughter. Ten looked at her sisters, her face feeling hot and sweaty. "Oh, Taney," one said. Her laughter was barely contained. "You're always so gullible. I think that's what I'll miss about you the most." Ten frowned, and for a moment, she forgot about the phantom trigger she pulled, but only for that moment. 3 hard knocks resounded through the old truck's metal. 3 hard knocks from the driver. 3 knocks that marked the birth of her and her sisters' conjoined destinies. This sound had been bred into them, fostered them, nourished them in the depths of their pain. For it was their charging battle cry. Like a switch, like blinking or breathing, she and her sisters activated their nanoscale helms, feeling it enclose around her head, for a moment blinding her in darkness, before winking on, feeding her vision readouts and tactical overlays. Yes, it was like breathing. Her heartbeat only rose half a tick as she and her sisters reached down for their rifles. The Serif Mark III carbine was old, dating back to the fall of Seraph 200 years ago. But they were reliable, having been passed through the centuries from one warrior to the next until finally they came into Ten and her sister's hands. A compact gun, its frame was sleek and grey, the grip ergonomic, fitting her hand as though it had been made for it. Well worn but polished by Ten's hands, it was marked by etchings of ancient spiralling runes blessed by the Mother Superior. From her side, she pulled free a magazine of anti-Elysium bullets that she and her sisters had affectionately named demi-killers. She gazed at the magazine head for only a moment, noting the white glowing ambrosia-infused tips, before slapping the mag into the Mark III and flicking the safety off. The truck shook and its wheels squealed, though confined to the back of the truck and lacking any windows. 10 knew where they were headed. She, like all her other sisters, had memorized the route when they were 3 years old. The first part of the plan was simple, if not blunt. Air infiltration had long been abandoned. Semi-air infiltration with LEV vehicles was considered, and for a time she and her sisters thought it the best means of entry, but after several dozen failed simulations, they'd concluded a more brutal and archaic means of entry was needed. They would ram the gate, pure and simple. 10 could see it now. See as the truck sped up through traffic, weaving past ground, treading LEV cars and auto rollers. See the dark sky and neon-filled lights of the city. She could imagine the people's faces, even though that was an unnecessary use of brain power. She could see them turn heads as the truck turned hard down a right road, a road that led only to the Grim Tower. They would yelp and scream in surprise as the truck broke through the old wire fence gate that portioned the road. By then, the drive, a loyal Seraphim militiaman dressed in casual clothes, would roll out and slip into the forthcoming chaos, but not before activating the old truck's self-driving mode, a mode which the militia had modified. 10 could hear the truck's engine rev, feel the accelerating force push her to the side as she gripped her Mark III tighter in her grasp. She could imagine the truck racing towards the first checkpoint, a single grey armoured guard flagging the speeding auto-roller down before realising, as its headlights glare brighter and brighter upon its approach, that it wouldn't stop. She can imagine the god jumping away as the truck breaks through the wooden barricade. 10 felt the truck bounce over something as they continued to gain more and more speed. Next, they would pass through the gauntlet of auto-firing guns that were stationed along the side of the road, revealing themselves from long-hidden ports and unleashing a barrage of gunfire. But the truck's back half had been doubly reinforced. 10 heard the bullets hitting the truck, sounding like raindrops against her window. By now they were close enough that she could feel the tower, and almost see it looming like a giant in their path. Her sisters could feel it as well. In unison, they readied their Mark IIIs, pushing one leg onto the edge of the seat. Across from them, they braced their backs into the wall. In her mind's eye, she could see it, the truck sparking with gunfire as it made its way towards its final destination, the tower's main gate. It resembled the arched doorway of a cathedral, and like the old places, the entrance set ready to greet giants. Stationed in front of it were 1 or 2 guards. They'd chosen this time to attack because the guards were changing shift.